Every story hides a scream. Dare to listen.
Darkness never sleeps.
Most visitors come for the glittering myths, queens without heads, princes lost in the dark, but those stories are only the surface. The tower's truest ghosts belong to the ones no one remembers. They are the builders, guards, cooks, and prisoners who left nothing but fingerprints on the mortar and breath on the cold air. They do not wander for fame. They linger because the walls never stopped listening. The Cold Harbour Gate was part of the tower's outer wall, close to the Thames. The gate itself is long gone, but the spot where it stood still has a reputation. They say a carpenter died there hundreds of years ago, and that he's still working on something unfinished. In the early 1500s, the tower was always under repair. Damp air from the river rotted the wood faster than the stone could hold it. Carpenters, blacksmiths, and masons came and went with the seasons. One of them was a 19-year-old apprentice named Charlie Tanner. He was said to be a good worker, quick with a hammer, confident for his age, and proud to be part of the king's fortress. During a routine job near the outer wall, Charlie was replacing a beam that supported a storage frame by the old gate foundations. It was late in the day, the light fading, the kind of tired hour when men rush to finish before dark. The rope holding the frame above him snapped. The beam dropped instantly. The noise carried across the yard like cannon fire. They found what was left of him crushed under the weight. The others buried what they could near the wall, covered it fast, and moved on. The tower didn't stop for death, not a worker's anyway. For years, that area remained quiet. Then wardens began reporting a faint, steady tapping late at night, always in threes, like a hammer on wood. Sometimes it came from the stones, sometimes from the ground. The sound stopped the moment anyone spoke. When they searched, there was nothing there. In the 1800s, a yeoman warder walking the grounds near Cold Harbour after midnight said his lantern began to sway on its own. He described the air turning heavy, as though someone was standing right beside him. Then he heard it. 3 sharp taps, close enough that he felt the vibration in his boots. The following night, he brought another guard with him. They both heard the same thing, and quickly made off from the area. Nearly 4 centuries after Charlie's death, in the early 1970s, 2 maintenance workers were sent to inspect the Cold Harbour site. The area was being stabilized as part of restoration work. The men were checking old stone supports near the base of the wall when one of them, Riley, froze halfway up his ladder. He swore he felt a firm hand grip his shoulder, strong and cold. Thinking it was his mate, he turned to speak. No one was there. The other worker was across the site, out of reach. A second later, Riley's toolbox tipped over by itself, spilling nails and a hammer across the cobblestones. They both left the area and refused to finish the job. The site was cleared later that week, but the sound of hammering didn't stop. Guards still heard it. Faint, distant, regular. Always in threes. Modern staff sometimes report hearing movement down there when it rains. The sound carries through the stone, like someone working under the surface. A few have even claimed to see a dim blue light, shaped roughly like a man bent over his work, vanishing when approached. One former night warden said he'd grown used to it. "You don't go looking for it," he said. "You just nod and keep walking." Whatever's left of Charlie Tanner seems to be still on the job, hammering, fixing, or maybe just trapped in the last task he ever started. No one's sure what he's building down there. But if you stand near the Cold Harbour wall after dark and listen, you might hear it too. 3 knocks, then silence. Bywood Tower sits near the main entrance of the Tower of London. It's one of the oldest parts of the fortress, with narrow stone steps winding up inside its walls. Guards still use that stairwell today, though few like to be there after dark. They say a woman's voice can sometimes be heard there, quiet, tired, and calling a name no one recognizes. The story goes back to the late 1500s. The tower wasn't just a prison then. People lived and worked inside it. There were kitchens, stores, and bakeries that kept food moving between soldiers, servants, and prisoners. One of the men who worked in the tower bakery fell ill during a bad summer. Some say it was plague. Others said it was fever brought in from the river barges. His wife, a woman from the city, came each day to bring him bread and water, waiting at the gate near Bywood Tower. But once the illness spread, the guards sealed the doors. No one was allowed in or out. The woman came anyway. Every night she waited near the stairwell, holding a basket, hoping someone would bring her news. No one did. When the sickness reached her husband, the tower's bell rang once at midnight to mark another death. The next morning, the woman was found slumped against the wall near the steps. She died there alone, still holding the basket. Her body was taken away quietly before the gates reopened. For years afterward, wardens and sentries said they saw movement by that same stairwell, a faint glow in the fog, always shaped like a woman. One described seeing her walking up the stairs, slow and steady, her head bent as if she was still listening for someone's voice. In the early 1900s, a guard reported the smell of warm bread drifting through the stairwell during a night patrol. He followed it to the upper landing, but found nothing. He later said the air turned cold so quickly that frost formed on the railing. His lamp went out by itself, and in the silence he heard soft weeping echo down the steps. Others noticed small things. Flour appearing on the stone floor when no one had used the kitchen. Handprints on the wall, not of soot or dirt, but white like dust. Sometimes guards found the scent of smoke or felt heat, as if an oven door had just been opened nearby, though there hadn't been a fire in that part of the tower for hundreds of years. No one talks about the stairwell much now. The tower's tours pass close to it, but the public can't go inside. The staff say it's best to leave it that way. One yeoman warden, now retired, once said that every few months, when he locked the gates for the night, he'd hear a quiet sound coming from the steps. A woman's voice, soft and distant, saying "Thomas." When he first heard it, he thought it was a trick of sound, the wind through the stonework, but the next time he recognized the name. It was the same one recorded in the old ledgers beside the note that read, "Thomas, Baker, deceased." No one has ever answered her, and maybe that's why she's still there, waiting by the Bywood stair, with the smell of bread and a name that no one says anymore. The Bloody Tower has stood for more than 6 centuries, and its name has always drawn attention. Tourists know the stories about the princes who vanished, but the tower's wardens will tell you there's something else down there, something older, quieter, and harder to explain. Beneath the Bloody Tower is a narrow corridor that connects to the lower ward. The air down there is different, colder, heavy with damp, and too still, even in summer. The walls are lined with rough stone, some marked with old carvings and faint gouges that don't look like tools made them. The earliest mention of the passage comes from a 15th century record describing a noise from the stone. It was dismissed as rats or shifting mortar, but over the years that explanation didn't hold. Guards kept hearing scratching, faint at first like fingernails on wood, then louder, sharper, as if someone was trapped behind the wall, trying to claw their way out. An old story claims that a mason was entombed alive during construction after being caught stealing from the armory. There's no proof, but the legend stuck. Some say the scratching started the same week his disappearance was recorded. In the 1800s, a night warden reported hearing the sound while making his rounds. He said it came from the wall near the old iron door. When he pressed his ear to the stone, it stopped. Moments later, he heard it again, directly behind him, higher up the passage. In the 1920s, a new electric light system was installed in that passage. The workers reported hearing tapping and scraping from behind the wall each night when they finished for the day. One man joked that the tower didn't like being modernized. On the third evening, one of their lamps shattered for no reason, cutting the room into darkness. When they brought the light back, they found a new crack running down the wall. Modern staff rarely go down there alone. Even today, wardens say the sound still happens, always from the same stretch of wall. Sometimes it's gentle, sometimes frantic, like nails dragging on concrete. The stonework's been replaced in parts, but the noise hasn't stopped. The current yeoman guards keep that corridor locked after dark. Officially, it's to protect the old structure, but those who've worked there a long time tell a different story. They say the scratching doesn't come from rats or shifting stone. It comes from inside the wall itself. When they do maintenance now, they leave the lights on, even if no one's working. The sound doesn't like the light, they say. But every so often, when someone passes through at night, they hear it again. That steady, patient scratching following their footsteps. No one knows what it wants, or if it's trying to get out. But whatever's behind that wall has been trying for over 500 years, and still hasn't stopped. The Salt Tower sits in the inner wall of the Tower of London, looking out over the river. From the outside, it seems quiet, square, solid, and small, but inside, it's one of the tower's strangest places. Guards say it's colder than anywhere else, no matter the season, and when the wind moves through it, it sounds like someone breathing. The tower dates back to the 1230s. It's been a storehouse, a cell, and a guard post. During the Tudor period, it held prisoners accused of treason, including men who were never seen again. One record mentions a lamentation heard nightly within the upper chamber. The entry ends with a note that the sound stopped when the room was sealed. In the 1600s, during renovations, a mason found a hidden cavity behind one of the walls. Inside was a small wooden bench and a chain fixed to the stone. Nothing else. The chamber was resealed after inspection. Not long after, the night watch reported a strange sound moving through the tower, a long, low moan that rose and fell like someone struggling to breathe. Every few decades, the same thing happened again. Sometimes it was described as wind, other times as a voice. A yeoman warder in the 1890s wrote that the sound made his chest tighten. He compared it to a dying man drawing air through wet cloth. Another account from the early 1900s described it as a deep sigh that travels from one wall to another, with no source found. In the 1950s, when the tower was being rewired for electricity, 2 engineers stayed late one night to finish work in the upper chamber. Around midnight, they both heard the same long, uneven sound coming from the floor. Thinking it was an air leak, they checked the ducts, but there were none. Then the noise rose again, louder, as though coming from inside the wall. One of them felt a faint vibration through the stone, like something pressing back. Both men left without collecting their tools. When the site was reopened the next morning, the tools were still there, but the air in the room was freezing, colder than anywhere else in the building. Condensation covered the walls, even though the rest of the tower was dry. The temperature returned to normal after the tools were removed. Modern visitors who tour the Salt Tower often mention the cold. Some say they can feel it tightening around their arms, even in summer. Others have reported a pressure in the chest, like standing in deep water. On quiet days, the wardens say, the air there moves in a way that doesn't match the wind outside. The salt tower still carries that uneasy atmosphere. The walls drip when the rest of the tower is dry, and the air feels charged, like before a storm. Some say it's just the wind moving through old cracks in the stone. Others think it's the echo of a prisoner's last breath, a sound that never stopped, just kept looping through the walls, trying to leave. Whatever it is, when the tower closes for the night and the corridors empty, that sound still finds its way through the stones. A long, low breath that shouldn't be there. And if you stand in the salt tower long enough, it feels like the walls are breathing with you. The Queen's House stands inside the Tower of London complex, near the old scaffold site on Tower Green. It's one of the few buildings there made of timber rather than stone. From the outside, it looks peaceful. Black and white beams, small windows, flowers in the summer. But for centuries, the guards have said it's the quietest place in the tower for a reason. The story starts around 1536, the year Anne Boleyn was held and executed. The Queen's House was new then, built for royal use and lodging senior officers. One of the servants assigned there was a young maid named Eleanor Dare. She was known for keeping to herself, polite, careful, and soft-spoken. Eleanor worked under the housekeeper, tending fires and cleaning the hallways. When Queen Anne was brought to the tower, Eleanor was seen often near the stairwell that led to her quarters. Records show she carried trays and linens to the guards outside the Queen's room. But one morning, she didn't appear for duty. Her belongings were still in her small room, and the other servants said they heard something during the night. A sharp cry, followed by the sound of someone running down the stairs. A search was made of the Queen's house and the surrounding grounds. They found nothing. No body, no sign of struggle. The official record lists her as departed without leave. But those who lived there said otherwise. They said she never left. Soon after, the guards on night watch began to report seeing a woman walking across the courtyard between the Queen's house and the scaffold site, always at the same time, just before dawn. She wore a blue gown that shimmered faintly, even in low light. When they called out, she vanished. In later years, staff described hearing light footsteps on the wooden floors at night, even when the building was locked. One officer in the 1800s said he followed the sound up the staircase and saw the shape of a woman standing at the landing, one hand on the banister, head tilted as if listening. Her dress was a dull, faded blue. He said the air around her smelled faintly of smoke and soap, like the servants' quarters. She disappeared before he reached her. During the Second World War, when the tower was partly evacuated, a warden reported seeing a figure in blue moving past the windows of the Queen's house at dusk. He thought it was a trespasser until he realized the reflection showed no face. The yeoman warders have a saying, "She walks when the lights dim." No one knows what happened to Eleanor Dare. There are no burial records, and her name isn't listed among those released from service. But the blue figure still appears now and then, crossing the courtyard, as if finishing one last errand that was interrupted centuries ago. When the dawn mist settles over Tower Green, the Queen's house looks calm again, as if nothing ever happened there. But those who know the story say she's still keeping her rounds, silent, careful, and always dressed in blue. The Tower of London has been many things: fortress, palace, prison, and armory. Every inch of it has heard something it shouldn't. The wardens don't talk much about ghosts, but they all talk about the sounds. They're not the kind that come from footsteps or pipes or settling stone. They're the kind that stop you mid-breath, the kind you hear once and never forget. Most of the reports come from the night shifts. The tower after closing is another world. No visitors, no footsteps, no voices, just the slow hum of the river outside and the echo of your own boots. That's when the noises start. One of the oldest records comes from the 1890s. when two guards on patrol stopped outside the Martin Tower after hearing what they thought was the drawbridge chain lowering. It wasn't possible. The bridge had been locked and bolted for years. The sound went on for nearly a minute, heavy metal rattling through the air, followed by a sharp crash like the gate slamming shut. When they checked, everything was still. No sign of movement. Another report from the same period mentions drumming, steady, rhythmic, and coming from the inner ward. Some said it was a soldier's march. Others said it matched the cadence used for executions centuries earlier. The sound was traced across the grounds, but stopped whenever the guards approached. It started again when they turned away. Inside the White Tower, cleaners have long refused to work alone. They say the upper gallery sometimes hums when the building is empty. It starts as a vibration, low, almost inaudible, and builds until every sound in the room fades under it. The vibration stops the moment someone speaks. In 1915, a yeoman on duty in the Waterloo barracks reported what he called a scream without a mouth. He said it came from high above the walls, a single, sharp sound that carried through the entire courtyard. His partner heard it too. Both men described it as neither male nor female, not human, not animal. The sound was logged, investigated, and filed away as unexplained atmospheric resonance. During World War II, the wardens stationed in the tower said they sometimes heard cannon fire when the skies were quiet. The echo rolled in from the river, shaking the glass in the chapel. No reports of gunfire existed from anywhere nearby. The following morning, bombers were heard over London. It wasn't the first time the tower seemed to sound a warning before something terrible. Ask the yeoman warders about it, and most will smile and shrug, but a few will tell you straight. The tower doesn't make those sounds by accident. It remembers, and sometimes the memories come back through the stone. You can call it air pressure, or pipes, or acoustics from the river, and most of the time that'll do. But the people who work there know better. They don't look for the source anymore. They just keep walking. And listen for the sound that the tower doesn't like to explain. The Wakefield Tower stands near the river wall, one of the oldest surviving parts of the Tower of London. Built in the 1220s, it was once used as royal quarters and later as a guard post. From the outside, it looks calm. Round stone walls, narrow arrow slits, and a small doorway that leads down into the dark. But it's here, more than anywhere else, that the guards still talk about seeing someone who shouldn't be there. The story of the century has been around for as long as anyone can remember. The earliest written account dates to the 1860s, when a yeoman warden on patrol reported seeing a man in uniform standing motionless by the tower entrance late at night. The figure was described as tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in an older style of guard's tunic. When approached, the figure didn't move, and then, without a sound, vanished. In 1915, a guard on duty near Wakefield heard footsteps pacing behind him. He turned and saw the outline of another sentry in full dress, pacing the same path he was on. When he tried to speak, the figure stopped, turned its head, and slowly lifted a pike to its shoulder before fading into the dark. During the 1940s, soldiers stationed in the tower reported the same apparition. One recalled waking up in the barracks to the sound of boots on the stone floor outside. Thinking it was a patrol change, he looked through the window and saw a lone figure walking along the river wall in the fog. The same tunic, the same steady march. The footsteps echoed even after the figure disappeared. In the 1960s, a yeoman warder and a police constable patrolling together heard the distinct sound of a sword being drawn from its sheath. They found nothing but a faint metallic ring echoing through the corridor. Later that same week, another warden said he saw a reflection of a man in armor in one of the display cases, though no one was standing behind him. Today, the Wakefield Tower is part of the public tour route. Visitors walk through without knowing much about what's been seen there after dark. But the wardens still talk about cold spots that appear near the entrance and vanish within seconds. Whether it's the echo of routine or something older trapped in its task, the Wakefield Tower still has a presence that feels alive. Visitors might not notice it in the daytime, but the guards do. Late at night, when the fog creeps up from the river and the sound of boots starts to echo again, they know they're not the only ones keeping watch. The Cold Room isn't part of the public Tower of London tour. It's a small, low chamber buried beneath one of the inner walls, plain, square, and featureless except for the stone. It doesn't have a story that fits neatly into the guidebooks, but everyone who's ever worked there knows it. They don't talk about it much, and when they do, they always use the same word to describe it: wrong. The first written record of the Cold Room dates to the late 1600s, when it was used as storage for food and tools. A short note in the tower accounts describes a persistent chill, even in warm months, causing meats to harden and frost to form upon the stone. The chamber was sealed after that, then reopened a century later to be used for coal. Every time it's reopened, the same thing happens. The temperature drops without reason. Torches struggle to burn. The air feels thicker, as if the room doesn't want to be entered. In 1892, a team of engineers was sent to inspect the lower levels for flooding. One of them, Thomas Lytton, recorded in his journal that he'd found a chamber cold enough to bite the bone. His notebook said the walls were wet with condensation, yet the floor was dust dry. He wrote that his breath fogged instantly, even though it was midsummer. The guards started calling it the Cold Room after that. When anyone asked where it was, they'd just point toward the base of the inner curtain wall and say, "Down there." In the 1920s, the tower's heating system was expanded. Workers found frost on the Cold Room's inner wall while installing new piping, frost in July. They measured the temperature at 7 degrees colder than anywhere else in the tower. No airflow, no drafts, and no reason. No one knows what causes it. Some say it's trapped air from ancient vaults. Others think it's something else, something that's been there since the tower was first built, buried deep and still awake. Whatever it is, the tower keeps it hidden. And when the rest of London swelters under summer heat, the Cold Room stays as it always has, silent, dark, and covered in frost. The tower has kept its secrets for nearly 1,000 years, and some of them are still watching. If these stories sent a chill down your spine, don't vanish just yet. Please give the video a thumbs up. Join me every week by subscribing to the channel for new hauntings, true horrors, and forgotten legends that refuse to rest. Thanks for joining Whispers in Nightmares. Tap that hype button and let the darkness whisper back. Good night.